Okay, so to give a brief overview of Dr. Ifriky, Dr. Ifriky TADADJEU has over 8 years of experience in the field of satellite and space mission design. He was involved in more than 3 space missions and has provided technical review for more than 20 space mission proposals. A published and recognized expert, he has taught in universities in Europe and Africa and has co-supervised at master's and PhD level. He founded the company Nano Satellite Missions Design Limited, which is a new space company in Cameroon, which provides satellite data and related intelligence, as well as certifications and consultancy related to satellite and space mission design. This is an incredible profile. Thank you so much, Dr. TADADJEU, for taking out the time to speak to us. Thank you for taking out the time to help us understand this topic. So the floor is yours.
Hi, and thank you for the introduction. Professor Michio Kaku, sometimes when he's introduced, he says, after such an introduction, I too would like to meet the speaker. To stick to the theme of the day, entrepreneurship as a growth accelerator for Africa's space program. I would like to start by saying that I believe that entrepreneurship is the growth accelerator for Africa, period. Doesn't matter which industry, which sector. Now, having said that, I would like to dive into the way I want to talk about this particular topic. I want to take a different direction from the standard way these things are presented, you know. I want to step aside from the conversation about what is entrepreneurship, how do you go about, you know, starting a company, what is the space industry like in Africa? And I mean, Space in Africa is doing a fantastic job communicating on that. I would much rather, during the Q&A session, I prefer if you have questions about where you can learn more about the state of the African space industry today, and where you can learn more about the space industry in general. And if you want to learn more about entrepreneurship in general, then yeah. Today, I want to share an experience. I want to share a journey. I want to start by saying that the idea of entrepreneurship, and I don't want to say entrepreneurship itself, but the idea of entrepreneurship has to do with creating value where that value is needed and getting enough financial return from it that you can continue creating the value for more and more people who need that value. So you need to have something that is needed and for which people are willing and able to pay. In this particular case, we're talking about the space industry, the African space program, African space sector, so African space industry. This industry needs to grow. Why? Let me put some perspective before diving into the journey. First, I want to ask that you reassure me that you hear me well, that you can see the screen I'm sharing, and if you are into the grid mode, that you can also see me.
Everything is good from my end. I can hear you clearly and I can see your slides also.
Okay, fantastic. Some context about why this whole thing is important. You probably remember the economic tension between the US and China during President Trump's administration. At some point, some American companies were not allowed to do business with Chinese companies. A direct result was that Huawei devices could not utilize Google Play Store anymore, or any Google product for that matter. Now, suddenly, all those who had Huawei's, I owned the Huawei at the time, we started having a bit of a cold sweat. What are we going to do? Huawei had the financial and technological muscle to build their own app store and called upon a community to build their versions of all the apps we're used to. So it didn't really hurt them that way as we expected. But that's Huawei, that's China. They have the economic and technological muscle. What I want to bring forward here is what happens when relationships break down, even if for a period of time, and it happens. Along those same lines, I want to bring us back to Russia and Ukraine. We here in Africa were minding our own business, didn't ask anything from anybody. And somebody decided to invade someone else. They have their own brotherly issues there because Ukraine and Russia are brothers. They have their beef and we're now being affected here. Africa is the promised land. Everybody's coming for a piece of the continent, economically speaking. And US and Europe are losing momentum, their influence in Africa, and Russia is gaining momentum in that sense. So the US decided to attempt to pass a law that would allow them to pressurize African countries that have a relationship with Russia that the US doesn't like too much. What does that mean? If it passed, I don't think it did. It would mean that the US could decide that if it does not like the relationship between Russia and some African country, it could start putting pressure on that country to change the nature of these relationships. So I thought, imagine you are buying satellite data from Europe or US company. If out of the blue, the US decided that US companies in the space sector are not allowed to sell data to African countries who are friends with Russia, what do we do then? I'm in Cameroon. We have a fantastic relationship with Russia. So what do we do? And there's so many countries in Africa. So therefore, it is imperative to have some sovereignty when it comes to space. This whole story was to say the African space industry is needed, must flourish. We have to make sure it happens so that we have some sovereignty in this kind of contexts. All right, let's dive into this story. Because now we have a context, it's a good idea to start a company in the space sector for economic reasons. The market is ripe, it is growing, and for strategic reasons, as Africans, we must be sovereign when it comes to space infrastructure and data. But what does it take? Let me share my journey, so you have a sense of the journey. So if at the end of today you decide, you know what, this was so compelling, I am starting a company, at least you have some idea of one guy who was crazy enough to try, and how that might go. So I started in Cameroon, my studies. I studied at the University of Buea. In 2008, I went to continue my studies in South Africa. In 2018, that's about 10 years later, I went to France for a postdoc, and I had the opportunity to stay and continue in France. And the plan was not to for me, because while I was in France, I noticed how many companies in the space sector are diving into Africa, and I decided that I will not just watch how they dive in, I will participate myself and contribute. So the plan was to go back to South Africa, but I started I wanted to visit Cameroon first before going to South Africa. That was in 2020. And COVID basically got me stuck in Cameroon, which was a fantastic thing because of what happened next. So what did I do in these different places? In Cameroon, I went all the way to a Bachelor's of Science and with a minor, with a BS in physics with a minor in computer science. When I got to South Africa, I did another year for BTech Electrical Engineering. I did a master's in electrical engineering at the same time as I was doing a master's in electronics engineering in France. It was a dual degree. You can imagine how little of a social life I had during those 2 years and some change. Then I did a doctorate in electrical engineering, and I did a postdoc related to space radiation environment. Then when I went to France, I did a postdoc as a space mission analyst, and I registered NMD there. That was the birth of NMD, end of 2019, because that's when I registered. I was still in France and I registered it in South Africa. After COVID, I moved the whole thing to Cameroon in 2020. When I moved to Cameroon in 2020, 1 year later, I decided to register NMD Limited in Cameroon. It was a beautiful strategic decision. Now, all this along the way, you know, you need to prepare. And I quite like this slide. You need to prepare to take a beating, because a beating you will take. There's no way around it. Financial beating, emotional beating, you know. It's difficult. And again, difficulty is just a measure of the amount of energy and effort you need to put in to be good at anything. And the amount of effort to be good at this entrepreneurship game is a lot, and it takes years. So yes, you'll take a beating. Just be ready for it. You hit, fall, you get back up, you keep going. Along the way, you should listen to Master Yoda. And I don't know how many nerds are in the room now, but if you remember this statement, do not, try not, do or do not. So basically he's saying, don't try to do anything. You either do or you don't do. Don't try. Yeah, I'll try to see if I could possibly attempt a company. Don't do that. Start a company or don't start one. The only way really to do business is to be in business. So listen to him and don't try. Either you do or you don't do. Be Chuck Norris. You have to. Why? Because I'm sure all of you here, you have heard about a million Chuck Norris jokes. You know, the part where Chuck Norris doesn't mow the lawn, he dares the grass to grow. You have to become that kind of a person. You have to invent a road where there isn't. And in the proper Chuck Norris philosophy, you don't get lost, you know. The road decides it has to come to you. It's a different mindset and mind frame altogether that is necessary to be successful in the space sector in Africa. So far, along this journey, you know, we didn't do too bad. 80+ people trained with NMD certifications. We featured among the 10 startups to look out for in 2021 on the Génie d'Afrique. Early in 2023, we got nominated as Best Newcomers in Cameroon for the Global Startup Awards. And just yesterday, we signed a major investment and collaboration partnership. And this part is interesting. And, about there's this idea that you need money to start. No, you don't. People never invest in an idea. If someone takes out money, it's because they believe you're the person to take the whole project to completion. They know very well that it's not going to go according to plan. They need to be convinced that you're the person who can adapt when things don't go according to plan. Not if things don't go according to plan, when things don't go according to plan, because something will not go according to plan. Because of all this journey of getting beaten up and, falling and starting back, starting with one plan and moving to the next, eventually, starting with one fundraiser, second and a third, and it didn't quite work out. This finally got the investment and collaboration partnership that we needed to really take things to the next level. And that signature happened yesterday. To get this, again, to get this far, in connection with what I said about, you could have a fantastic idea. If nobody believes you are the person to take it home, nobody invests, nobody assists you. And I must be grateful to all these companies through individuals who trusted me as leader of the company, who trusted the vision, and each one in their own small way, some bigger than others, contributed to us being where we are today. And I thought it's important to acknowledge them. So what now? And I like that this slide is here, because the question might be, so MD, what do you do? What do you do? Yes, this story looks very fantastic, but what do you do? We sell satellite data, and we'll keep selling satellite data, high resolution images, AIS data, and more, weather data. We sell IoT relay, so we help connect objects that are in places where there's no coverage and where it's likely not to be enough coverage in the near future or foreseeable future, actually. Because for operators to go somewhere, they need a critical mass of users. If they don't have that critical mass of users, they don't go there because it doesn't make business sense. It does not mean that connectivity is not needed there, but we provide the possibility to connect objects where there's no coverage. It helps in the agricultural sector, for example, and monitoring strategic infrastructure far, far away. We keep training people, provide certifications, and we intend to build human capacity in Africa when it comes to space science and technology. And moving more upstream, we intend building artificial intelligence on board to have space missions where the satellites are autonomous as will simplify the operations that we need in Africa. That, let me circle back to the beginning. That is my journey of how I contribute to the entrepreneurship and the economic sector of the African space industry. I do hope everyone here is involved in one way or the other. If you're not, please dive in, because the continent definitely needs more company involved in the space sector. Thank you very much for your attention. That's my email address. I'll leave it here. If you have any questions, even after the session, feel free to email me. If you would like to be trained, if you would like to be mentored, I'm happy to share whatever little experience I have with you. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Ifriky. That was a wonderful session. Pretty brief, but it was well loaded. The content was amazing. I think what I particularly told her was Master Yoda. So you don't try. It's either you do it or you don't do it. That's pretty direct and a very, very sound advice. Thank you so much. So we are going to go into the next session of the conversation, and I'll be asking few questions. I think you've addressed most of them in your presentations, but it will be good for purposes of emphasis, and also you have the liberty of explaining more. And you started your journey from like in the middle, like how it all started with your academic interest and your journey so far, how you started in Cameroon. But just briefly, we could just go way back. There's some people here who like have no idea what the space sector might be. If there's anybody everybody here, and or how your interest actually started in space. So if you could just tell us very briefly your initial interest in space technologies and space business in particular. Is it something you've always known, or is it something you just learned along the way, maybe in the university or something? You can stop sharing your screen for now. Yeah, also. That's my question.
You did say I can stop sharing, yes?
Yeah, it's perfectly fine.
Okay, great. Well, how it all started. It's an interesting story. I will make it very short so there can be more questions. When I got to South Africa, the funding for me to go to South Africa was a family effort. And it had to get me so far. And there was supposed to be my own effort to keep on going. I had to find a way to finance the rest, either through part-time work, through bursary, some form of funding. So I went looking. I went to UCT, University of Cape Town. In South Africa, I was in Cape Peninsula University of Technology. And while I was busy with the year for the Bachelor of Technology, I had funding for just about half that year. I had to complete that year and then find money for the rest. I looked for jobs on campus. I went for part-time sales rep. And then I went to UCT, finding out if I could have a bursary even for what comes later. And there, the head of Department of Electrical Engineering told me something very interesting. He said, you know, you're looking for formal ways of funding. What you should do is to knock at the door. Just knock at the door. He showed me the corridor. He said, there are professors from that end to that end. They have money that comes from industry. Knock at the door, get in, tell them what's your situation. And somebody, the worst that could happen is that they say, sorry, I don't have money for you. But they might send you to the next guy who does have money. And I did that. And there were like 3 or 4 professors who did have money. At the time, there was a restriction. Their money was tied up to South African citizens only. But at least I got the sense that, hey, just ask. Don't be afraid. So I heard when the space program was starting at CPUT in 2009, I heard there were some of my classmates who were emailed about the space program. And I'm here, I'm like, oh, all right, I'll wait, maybe they'll email me. And then the next guy says, hey, I got an email today. And then the next guy, I'm like, what the hell? And I said, you know, where is this guy's office? And I went and I knocked at the door. And I got in and I said, some of my classmates have received an email about the space program. I want in. He says, all right. So let's see what's your ambition. And funny enough, that's the story of how I got a bursary that year within the space program. That covered all of my academic year. But the condition for me to have that bursary, you will not believe this, was that I accept that they also fund my master's. Because I had to commit to stay for the master's. They needed students for the master's program. So I was like, so you're telling me that for me to get the bursary for this year, I should let you pay for my master's too? I said, yeah, when you put it that way, that's basically it. And yeah, it was, so where do I sign? It never would have happened if I did not knock at that door.
Knock on the door. That was such a good deal.
That's the main takeaway. If you're going to go for something, there's one Professor Mellet at CPUT said, if you're going to make a move, make it bold.
Yeah, wow. That's pretty interesting. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I have another question about apart from financial challenges when you started your space business, were there any other challenges to face, being that entrepreneurship in the Africa space sector is something that is relatively new? Was it hard to get, let's say, human resources? Was there any difficulty maybe registering? How does registering a company works in Cameroon, especially for maybe satellite business? Apart from financial challenges which you've addressed, were there any other challenges to face, and how were you able to overcome them?
Yes, of course. let me, the registration part, perhaps not so much because that is admin. Every country has their administrative process. Once upon a time, it was difficult to register a company in Cameroon. Today, it's okay. Nobody really can today complain that, oh my God, registering is a process. It's difficult. No, Cameroon, not anymore. It used to be, but not anymore. So that was not really all the challenges. The big challenge is the perception of what comes from Africa. We have a problem in Africa about how we perceive what we do. What are you going to do that and that the white man doesn't do better? I have to say this. It is the truth. And I had to have to say this, but on the field, when you're starting, especially in a field like the space sector, you don't expect this kind of thing to be a barrier. And when you are in what is called French Africa, French-speaking Africa, the countries that used to be French colonies, there is, in Cameroon in particular, this saying that it's called le blanc est fort. When you see a piece of technology that is really up there, really fantastic, really fancy something, people will be like, le blanc est fort. So we are in 2023, and it is still very real as I am touching my hands here, that many believe that what comes from Europe and US must be better than what comes from Africa. I was fortunate enough to be invited to France to share my experience, and I had to bring that point ahead forward to say there are Africans in the audience, there are Europeans and Americans, there are people from all over the place in the audience. Hear me when I plead that you should give us our shot. It is not by speech, it is through results. Just humor us for 1 minute, just to see what we're capable of. It has to start on the continent, but that is the biggest challenge, because you have something fantastic to sell. But I thought that it would be financial, because financial challenges, if you go on 100% sales and you sell, you get the money if you can sell. But if you have a barrier where people just look at you and where you come from and they say, this must not be of good quality, that's a different thing to handle. Yes, there were some HR issues where I realized I basically have to train those I'll collaborate with, but if you plan well, you can do that. You can do that. And that's also the story of how training became a big part of NMD's offering. Well, I said, I have to train the people. So yeah, that's some other challenges that I faced.
Wow, interesting. I think it's just majorly because we have so many years of relying on foreign products, so many years, and now we're trying to find our fits, and we don't just trust each other. And it's good to see that you are having such a positive spirit and you're carrying on anyways. So it's very inspiring.
Yeah, it's important to note also that many of those who are in Europe and European and US companies, when these companies bring out fantastic technology, it's important to realize that many Africans are hired by these companies.
Okay.
And are actually contributing to putting these products to light,
Okay.
So therefore, yes, it's a US, it's a European company, but the people behind, they are Nigerians, many Nigerians. Yeah. It's unbelievable how many Nigerians are building these crazy things, There are people from Angola, from Cameroon, from Rwanda, I mean, Ethiopia, it's Morocco, Algeria. I'm talking about people I've worked with.
You worked with, yeah.
DRC. It is amazing what they do. The name in front is a company from elsewhere, but the people are from all over the world. Here, I'm just talking about African nationalities, but of course you have Brazil, Spain, US, and so on and so forth. So
yeah, I understand. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Of course, I would definitely bring this issue because it's a topic that's very, very popular in the space sector, the issue of diversity and getting more women involved in space. So what is your point? What are your thoughts on the call for diversity, especially when it comes to space business? You said you've worked with so many people. What do you think about like women working in that side of the space sector? We might have like female lawyers and different like female space experts, but what is it like for business and entrepreneurship?
It's the same as my view on the general conversation about equality.
Okay.
I find that if there is equal opportunity, equal and fair opportunity, women don't have to prove they're smart. I mean, it's weird that some people feel that women have to prove that they are as smart or as capable. There is no question. Yeah, the parts where you would rather have a woman, especially in some really pointy science sectors. For me, the access has to be equal. Opportunities has to be equal.
Okay, so
I don't believe much in the quota.
Access, is it equal in your perspective? Do you know any female entrepreneur that has like a space startup in Africa? Have you worked with any female entrepreneur that runs a space startup in Africa?
Not in space. In space, I mean, there are women really active in the space sector, right? What I want to say now is on paper, you have this equal opportunity to access.
Okay.
But I have, every now and again, I like to ask the difficult questions to my lady collaborators, women collaborators, or friends who are in science and technology. And I ask, what is your experience of the barriers that are related to the fact that you're a woman? And then I realized that on paper, yes, of course, you know, everyone can access, but you do have these individuals, you know, the company can be whatever it is. At the end of the day, people drive these things. And you do have these unspoken rules, these, you know, back of the head beliefs, these little biases that are part of the build of the people in organizations. And while officially on paper, everything is, you know, nice and good to flow, there is still some work to be done in the mindsets where you don't think twice when you see someone is qualified, you see it's a woman, you're like, hold on, is she? No. That part needs to happen. It's happening more and more. In the space sector in particular, however, it exists much less because competence drives the game.
Okay.
You could be green with big black eyes from Mars. You are competent, you get the job done. Space has this, that the tolerance for errors is so slim.
Right.
You don't really have, when you send a satellite to space, you're not making a recall. It's not like the smartphones that were burning and they were recalled. It's out there. If it's broken, that's it. So you have to be at the top level of your competence if you're operating in the space sector.
Okay. So it doesn't matter which gender, just saying.
It doesn't, because competence drives the game. You put a man and a woman, the most competent, it's really, there's no question about who is going to. So whoever deserves it gets it. Whoever is good at it does it.
Okay.
Doesn't really, you know.
Okay.
And I have worked in diverse teams in the space sector, there's still relatively more men than women, but I don't think the ratio has to do with some bias, not in the space
Right.
sector anyway. I don't think
Okay.
as far, well,
Okay.
I don't know about Africa because I'm still sort of digging. Elsewhere, don't
All right.
think it's because there's
That's
some
fine.
bias. It must be choices of human beings, really.
Okay.
But you're good
Thank
at it, you get it. You know what you're
Yeah.
doing, you do it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your opinion. Thank you. I'll have just two more questions before. If you have any questions in the audience, please feel free to maybe send them to the chat, and or if you want to ask a question, you can just maybe raise your hands, or once we wrap up this session, you'll be free to ask a question. So with regards to the African Space Agency that has been recently launched, is something that is very exciting for all of us. How do you think the agency will affect the current status of space business in Africa? Do you see potential increase? Is there going to be public-private collaboration? I don't know. What do you think about it?
I think it's a fantastic thing that we have a now operational African Space Agency. It will oversee, well, you do know there's an African space policy and an African space strategy. The African Space Agency is custodian of those. Now, they can take, after the African Commission put this out, now the agency can take ownership and drive the general direction of where the focus should be of individual agencies in countries and space programs in countries. So far, even intuitively, it's going pretty well.
Okay.
There are different aspects to what boosts a sector. Prestige is one of those, and it does provide some prestige.
Okay.
Perception of profession is one of those. Does provide some positive perception. When you are under such an umbrella where you can see eye to eye from certain, even technical perspectives with the rest of the agencies on Earth, because you are under the umbrella of such an agency, it's great. I look forward to the concretization of the implementation plans.
Yeah, yes.
And
yes.
to how it becomes practical on the field. I'm really keen to see, but it's there. It can only be positive for the industry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And
I think
finally,
there's some questions in the chat box.
Yeah, there's some questions, and yeah, we'll get to them. You could just address them as soon as we're done. I think my last question is just, do you have any more role models in the industry in terms of space business? Maybe somebody you look up to or have closely worked with that could also be an inspiration to our audience. I see a lot of young people, most of them my friends that are here that might be interested in space business. So if you have any of such role models, if you would like to share with us. I know it's a tough one.
Role models. Role models. Well, this is going to be strange, but I do have one role model in general, and that's the artist Andrea Bocelli. I don't know if you know him. He's an Italian tenor. I do happen to have a music story as well. I sing and I compose, and even within the space sector, he still is a role model, not because he's involved in space, but because he is authentic.
Okay.
And that part, you have to have the courage to put forward who and what you really are. I like to say that if you really want to see something new and original under the sun, look in the mirror. You don't have to go far, but you have to have the courage to be who you are. If I transport this in the space sector, the way I contribute to the space sector cannot be the way someone else does it.
Yeah.
I really have to have the courage to bring my view, even if I am wrong, and I will be wrong a few times. And that's fine, it's part of the journey. But if I don't bring it forward according to my true self and the truth of my vision, I am not really contributing.
Okay.
I'm probably bringing more of something else that
Someone
exists.
else's.
And I can't really say that, you know, you bring your own little stone to the edifice, you bring your thread, your piece of thread to the tapestry. If you're not authentic, you're not bringing your piece of thread to the tapestry, taking your neighbor's thread, adding a bit to the same and adding it. But what Africa needs is really what her sons and daughters can bring, you know, original, that are fit to the context. I know it's strange, you might probably have been expecting to hear some really fancy names in the space sector. I admire people like Elon Musk and Jordi Puig-Suari, who is a friend, the co-inventor of the CubeSat standard. Robert Vancel, also a friend, who so Malik Maza. I do admire a lot. Most of them, if not all, abide by this philosophy, and the role model for me then stays the artist. For the first reason that the way he is authentic is a way that I can see as a model and say, I want to be as authentic as this guy. Right?
Yes.
And the second part is, because he's an artist, if you can elevate your craft to the status of art, then you really got it. And I'm still there when it comes to space science technology, but really I would like to become an artist of the space industry.
That's interesting. That's new. Okay. Wow.
You have to be that good for you to do what you're doing, and then it's just pure beauty, you know.
Yeah. We to come from. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Ifriky. Thank you so much. So we're going to be taking questions from the audience. We still have about 10 minutes or so, or more, a little bit above 10 minutes to be here. So please, if you have questions, I think there are some questions on the chat, so we could address some of that. I think, okay, well, somebody's hand is up. Daniel, okay, I'm going to ask you to unmute right now, so feel free to ask the question. Daniel, are you there? Okay, please go ahead.
Can you hear me? Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, thanks Ifriky for the wonderful presentation.
Daniel, could you speak a little bit louder? I don't think we can hear you very clearly.
Can you hear me?
It's fair, but it's not very good.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. It's way better. We can.
Yeah, thanks Ifriky for the wonderful presentation. My question is very simple. Which sectors do you think Africa has a great opportunity in the space industry? I know space is very, very diverse, like you mentioned. I think you give some tidbits, but then I would like to know, based on your experience so far, which sectors do you think we can start from? Who you think we can compete with regards to the global community? That's just my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Danny. I think we'll take all the questions and then you can answer. Maybe we'll just take Hish. There's no name here. Hish. You can ask.
So thank you very much for this opportunity, and it's inspiring. My name is Helen. I am currently I've been researching in this, using data, space data for agriculture, any sort of use, because there is a lot of promotion in sense of using the space data to create a startup My question to you is that because I had a mentor was telling me that I need a PhD, I need to do PhD, and that will help me when I set up a company in the future, if I want to be a leader, or those kind of the guidance he was giving me. I was wondering, is that a must? Is that a must having this PhD? Because I saw almost everyone today in African conference, everyone had PhD. So thank you very much if you can answer me this question.
Okay.
Okay, I think you can answer those two questions for now. You know, okay, Yivan has a question. Okay, so Yivan, you can go ahead, please.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you, Dr. Ifriky, for the amazing talk. I'm actually Cameroonian, and I think you have seen ourselves, but you might not remember. He was doing the defense of Lily. So, my question has to do with startups. How do you do when maybe you receive a lot of rejections? For example, you apply for some competition or you try to do some fundraising and you receive rejections and you start kind of doubting your idea. You look at the idea you're having and you're like, is this really worth it? Or why is it that nobody is seeing what I'm seeing? How do you go about such situation? Thank you.
Oh, I can't relate, honestly. I think I'm just going to drop one more question. I don't know if anybody has a question. Okay, I think there's a question on the chat box.
You're going to help me
It's
to
very
keep track
long.
of the
It's a
questions.
very long question. Okay, okay. There are 5 questions. So what sectors in what space sectors can Africa be competitive in? That was the first question. And the second question was just a moment, just to recap, if somebody needs a PhD to be in the space industry. And the third question is, how do you deal with rejection? That's also my question. And what kind of satellite data do you provide, and how do they inform and shape the African space industry? And the last question is, how can I get active with IoT and space, and also get mentorship? I think we have, okay. Yes, those are the questions.
Okay, so let's go back to the first one.
Did you get all of them?
The sectors. Say again.
Did you get all the questions? Or
yes. I want to start answering now. So the first is about this which sector, you know, is how can I say it? Which sectors are most competitive in so where do Africans position themselves if they're going to compete with the rest of the world in the space sector? I think that was Daniel's question. Did I understand the question well? Let me just make sure I get it well. So if you're in the space sector, how do you position yourself so that you can compete internationally? Just so I have to make sure that I'm answering the actual question.
It's a part of it, but the major question is, which sectors do you think we have a great advantage to compete with? You know, like I said, it is diverse. For example, we do not have what it takes today to start launching satellites like what you have, you know, these big things that Elon Musk is doing. Well, which other sectors do you think we can thrive with our current knowledge, background, and technology and resource? Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay, the simple answer is we have to solve our problems. That's the best thing we can do. We do have a lot of problems in Africa, and we should solve them. You will notice that all these big companies and all the big names became extremely good at solving their own problems. And then eventually these technologies became more or less useful to other people. But we need to solve our problems. While looking for solutions to solve our problems that are of African DNA, so to speak, and within the African context, we innovate in our context. I like the example of M-Pesa. You know, there was a challenge here in Kenya, and the birth of cell phone banking saw its days in Kenya. It's a beautiful story of how Africans use the tools that exist, cell phones and all that, to solve a problem of African context, and then the solution becomes exported. Many of our challenges require satellite data. This is going to dive into one of the other questions, I believe. But to optimize agriculture, you will ask yourself, how do others do it? It has become difficult to do without satellite data. To effectively connect objects, to monitor disasters, natural disasters, to monitor infrastructure, you know, for urban development, for traceability. Looking at the African continental free trade area, there's going to be a lot of intracontinental cross-country infrastructure. How do we monitor that? Yes, we could buy images from others, but we don't have much sovereignty unless we can put our own satellites in orbit that will help us monitor our infrastructure. So basically, let's focus on solving our problems. That in and of itself makes us competitive, because many companies from outside of Africa are coming to Africa to see if they can help us solve our problems and make some money out of it. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, that was point on for me. And
The
Daniel.
second is, do you need a, is Daniel okay? Or maybe
Yeah,
I go
that's fine.
through.
I let you
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Beautiful. The second question is Helen, I think, who asked if you absolutely need a PhD to start a company. Because you've been told, you've been wanting to start a company and you've been told you need a PhD first, and you want to know whether you do need a PhD to start a company.
Yeah, that what they said that, you know, having that PhD, particularly in America or any other part in America, it will give you that a head start, because it allow you to think differently and allow you to resilience. That's what they told me. And then I don't know if I have a PhD in engineering. I am an engineering background. So I said, okay, how am I going to do? I'm a system engineer. So what are the solutions? What do I want? This is the kind of research I've been doing.
Okay, let me put it this way. To have a head start, the only way to do business is to be in business. If you're going to start a company, you have to realize, like I said in the slides, you will get a lot wrong. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. You'll take a whole lot of a beating, and it is part of the process. I like to say that if babies stopped attempting to walk the first time they fall, we would all be crawling on the floor. You have to get it wrong many times to get it right one time. Sitting and waiting to do a PhD doesn't get you that. Start now, fast. Get it wrong now. Hit the wall now, so that, and when I say hit the wall now, it's while attempting to start your company. Start your company. Try and see if you can sell something that you're trying to propose. See if people are buying. Try. Get it wrong. Fix. The only way to get it is by doing it. So don't wait anymore. The PhD, if you want to do it in parallel, great. It is going to be a strategic advantage. It's going to be a branding advantage. You know, it's going to be a credibility factor. Because at the end of the day, if people are going to...
That's what they told me.
Say again?
That's what they said to me. If you're going to be in a space business, or if you're going to be in that, the credibility factor is important, they said to me.
Yes, yes. That's only one part of the whole game. All right? That is one part of the whole game. For sure, stop waiting. Stop waiting for anything. All right? the entrepreneurship part is about selling something, bringing value, making a profit such that you can have a value proposition that keeps funding itself. Even if you're communicating the way you come, because at the end you have to communicate, you have to sell. Are you registered for a PhD yet?
No.
Okay, great.
University.
Start your company and say that you are going to start a PhD so that you can, because use your PhD journey as a credibility factor. Say that this is your plan and this is the value you already can add today. And as you move towards, this can be part of your marketing and communication strategy. You can share some of your PhD challenges. You can share some of the entrepreneurship challenges just to grow your community. But one thing for sure, stop waiting. Don't wait. The only way to really get into business is you have to get dirty, dive into the mud, fight the good fight.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ifriky. This is a whole lot of inspiration for everybody. We still have some questions left. Okay.
The next. Okay, let me ask this. Do we have a fixed hard stop time, or are we flexible? Because I need to decide based on that how I go about answering questions. I don't want to drag and then we start rushing at the end.
Okay, it's flexible. It's flexible. We want to as soon as we are done with all the questions, then we can close for the day.
Okay, so I can. Okay, good. So I can answer.
Yeah. So
really,
we still have to answer. How do you deal with rejection as an entrepreneur? I think that was from you.
Okay. Do you know this idea of the sunk cost fallacy, where you invest so much time and energy and money in something, and at some point it starts to become obvious that it's not going to work, but you don't let go because you have invested so much and so much. There is a fine line between that and being one or two more rejections away from your breakthrough. And what really tells you which is which is whether or not you have fully taken a bet on yourself. What do I mean? I think, if I recall well, the question was about rejections when you're applying for this and competing here. Then you don't make it, you apply, then rejected. And it can be misleading when your rejections come from something that someone else is supposed to put a stamp on. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. As a company or as an individual, you could compete. You know, as an artist, you can audition a lot. Hell, I've made a number of auditions, right? Be it X Factor and some Lion King audition. This is arts now. I've done some singing competitions, and I've been rejected a lot. I've lost a lot of them. I've done some fundraisings for the company now in space that failed drastically. But these are things that someone else has to make that major move of, okay, I'm giving you a shot, I'm giving you a chance. You can line up these rejections as long as you want. If it is in the form of a funding, you just need to have the right mindset. If you're going to be entering competitions so that, you know, you get you decide that competitions are going to be one part of your overall strategy as a startup or as a company or as an individual. Fine, it's one channel. If you're going to be applying for grants and fundings as one part of your overall strategy, great. You apply, in which case, if I get a grant, fantastic, it's money that doesn't ask for equity. It has to be audited in general. So I have to manage this money with integrity. But it's a chance. I win a competition, it adds to my profile. Maybe there's a cash prize. Great. It's just part of the strategy. What you should absolutely spend energy on is selling your value. Maybe you put a lot of energy trying to sell, you're not getting it right, you're not talking to the right audience and things like this. These should be your attempts where I didn't package it right. I tried. I asked for feedback. Someone said, hey, try this different way to sell. You sell to this person, to that doesn't quite work. Someone says, hey, maybe your audience is over there. You try. The truth is, like I said, it's the same thing when you're starting a company. You need to get it, it takes many mistakes. It takes getting it wrong many times to get it right one time. Many times, that one time sets you up for life. It takes one deal. But to get to that one deal, sometimes you make a lot of mistakes. The part that becomes personal about rejection has to do with a lot of our upbringing. I don't remember, I think this was a question from Ivan, and I think Nelly also seconded the question. So both of you can tell me whether this is the case with you or not. As we were brought up, failure was always something that everyone tried to stay away from. You were not really allowed to fail. When you make a mistake, especially in school, people laugh at you when you make a mistake. People laugh at you when you get something wrong. People make it about you being inadequate when you are rejected. And then what this does is that you become scared to even try. And the day you gather the courage to try and you're rejected, you just, it just breaks you down. Entrepreneurship, when you decide to think entrepreneurship, you have to flip the script. Many times people say, try. If you get it wrong, at least you would have tried. If you fail, at least you would have learned something. And this way of looking at it supposes that learning something, growing, is like a byproduct. It's, a consolation prize. This is not the case. The truth is, there is no other way to learn and grow. It doesn't exist. It doesn't. If you think about it, I challenge you to give me one thing that you're good at that you didn't fail a lot of times. Hell, I don't care if it's cooking something, if it's drawing, if you eventually are great at maths in school. To get there, you had to fail a lot. I really challenge you to bring me one thing that you are confident that you're good at, that didn't take a lot of failures to become good at. Maybe you had 100% in school. Your exams, you scored 100%. But I bet you can tell the story of how you pulled all-nighters because there's this one problem that you kept having wrong and you became obsessed about getting it right. It took all those failures. It is the same in life. And that is the process. Being rejected doesn't bear testimony to who you are internally. Being rejected is part of the process. And if you don't understand that, you miss out on what you need to get from the rejections, which is why? Why did this one not work? What am I supposed to tweak? What am I supposed to arrange? And if ultimately you find that all the investment actually, like, it's not working, maybe you came with a solution to a problem that nobody had. When you realize that, hey, this is actually not the problem that people want to solve, have the courage to switch and then start gathering more rejections again. It's okay. It's the process. The learning and the growth is not a consolation prize. This is the way you learn and grow. The way I like to picture it is, today, you know, if you take a pen and an ant, if an ant wants to move a pen, it's complicated. You pick it up without thinking about it because you are of a certain size and strength. If I take it further, maybe you can pick up a glass of water to drink it. You don't feel the weight, it's light. It was not always the case. Once upon a time, you were small and picking up a glass of water required some effort. And then you grew up and now you can pick it up. The way you grow, you know, when you were small, maybe a bucket of 5 liters was a challenge for you to pick up. And then you grew up and now you pick it up without even thinking about it. The way you grow is by making these mistakes, by getting it wrong, by getting rejected. This is the story of how one person can handle some challenges that another is going to sit and think like, my God, I would probably just drop and die. I cannot handle this level of stress. Yes, now, today, because you have not gone through your journey, you are going through your journey. Own it, go through it, because even if you look back today, I bet you, if you're busy being rejected and you're asking the question, how do I handle this thing? It's hectic. I'm now starting to feel insecure. Just look back, not too far ago. I bet you will find a situation that you know you can handle today that back then you could not handle. If you look back, it doesn't have to be in science. It doesn't have to be related to the company, because these failures build you overall, mind you. You will be able to point 1 or 2 situations that you know today you can handle without really stressing. And you know that back then, oh, this thing would have stressed you to hell. That is a testimony of growth, right? So it's not personal. Learning and growing is not the consolation prize. This is the road. And the sooner you start, the earlier you make your mistakes, the many wrongs that will get you to that one right. All right, I don't know. Let's go to the next question.
I don't even know what to say. I've just been soaking it in, really soaking it in. Thank you so much. The next question here is okay, I think we're almost done. It's about the data. What kind of data? Yeah, what kind of satellite data do you produce for the African space? I think it was asked by Dorcas.
Okay, okay, I think I see it. What kind of satellite data do you provide, and how do they inform the shape the African space industry? Right, so high resolution imagery, space weather data, AIS data to identify the position of ships in our waters. And these are from a reseller point of view. So I have partnerships with companies that already have satellites in orbit, and I can resell these in Africa. Now, how do they inform and shape the space industry in Africa? Inform is a good one, because most of these that I am selling were not sold by an African local company. And it has given me the opportunity to understand the practical use cases in Africa. There are many use cases across the world, but now I'm getting to the great practical use cases in Africa. And how does it shape the industry? By selling these images and this weather data and all this data, I get to have a good sense of who actually buys it, who needs what resolution of imagery, who needs how much of what data. I get to prove the market. I get to expand on the market. I get to propose new things and see what works. Because when the time comes for us to build our own satellite, then we already know what the market is asking for, and we can focus on that. Some of the satellites that provide us some of this data have a whole panoply of payloads. Since in Africa we're not trying to just duplicate things, and we're not just sending satellites for the sake of sending. It has to solve actual problems. One good way to find out is by using data that is already available. And this is pretty much what it's doing. A good thing is that, I mean, they buy, there's a business case behind. And tomorrow, if a company in Africa decides that they want to participate in the industry from an upstream point of view, upstream is towards data that is in space, infrastructure that's in space, the hardware, the satellites, the launch vehicles, the subsystems in space, the hardware, the software that is running on the computer, that's upstream. The data comes down. Using this data for the end user application, that is more downstream. So these apps that give you the data that you're looking for. GPS is a fantastic example of a downstream application for an upstream that is made up of a constellation of GPS satellites. So this data is downstream, and I get to sell it downstream, get feedback as to what resolutions, what frequencies, some challenges that exist. For example, imaging Cameroon is difficult because sometimes you have a lot of cloud coverage. You need to decide when you can image and not. And so therefore, you know what to promise to clients. I cannot, for example, be trying to promise a client in Cameroon images every week. That is a lie. Mother Nature will not allow, right? Not optical images anyway. I would have to go for a different type of technology than optical images. But this is information that is good to have. You know, if I didn't go through this journey, I wouldn't know. So tomorrow, when the time comes to build our own spacecraft, we definitely, and if we need images of anything every day, we're definitely not going for an optical payload for Cameroon, because you will not have images every day. You go for something like synthetic aperture radio, LiDAR, or something that cuts through clouds, all right? So it's a long story to answer the question. This is the data that I provide, and providing this data, this is how it helps to inform and shape the industry. It tells us the truth about what is needed on the ground.
Dorcas, I hope, okay, she just sent a message. Okay, she's following. Okay, there's one more question. I think it was about mentorship, how to get mentorship in the space sector.
Yeah, there's an IoT thing here.
Yeah, IoT and space. Yeah, how can I get access? Yeah.
I would love to ask about how I can get active with IoT and space and learn and also get mentorship. It's okay. If you're already involved in IoT, then you understand how it works. It is simple. Internet of Things. It starts with the word internet. The whole idea is connecting things, objects. And the vehicle is internet. However, what happens when there is no coverage? Is it still Internet of Things? That's what we would call machine-to-machine communication. And IoT becomes one form of machine-to-machine. So then you have M2M, no? Machine-to-machine communication. But if you are going to introduce machine-to-machine communication on a day-to-day, it looks too fancy. IoT has already done the branding, so we stick with IoT, even if you're going to be in places where there's no internet coverage, where it's not strictly IoT because there's no internet there, right? But IoT is one form of machine-to-machine communication. And if you know how IoT works, basically one object sends information to another object via the internet. How you can get involved in space is think your IoT applications. I'm sure when you think IoT applications, you don't consider places where there's no coverage. Well, start considering places where there is no coverage, because the data you're trying to send via the internet, you can send straight to orbit. And this data will be relayed to a place where there is internet, and for it to go through the I part of IoT. And if it has to communicate with something else that is also where there's no internet, then you can send straight to satellite, and satellite can send it straight to that device that is where there's no coverage. So let me see, some things you can start looking at is LoRa technology, LoRa protocol. Look for, I hope you're noting, look for whatever you can read on satellite LoRa relay, space-based LoRa, LoRa. I think I should write
okay,
it
yeah,
here in the text.
I wanted to suggest that you maybe could write that for us.
Satellite enabled IoT. So if you Google those words, you're going to have a lot of things to read about those space missions that help to relay data. Small packages of data, not streaming videos and things. Well, you do have, they're so expensive that only military budgets can afford them. But for civilian use, it's really out of reach financially. But for smaller packages, LoRa seems to be the way to go. Mentorship, well, send me an email, it's no problem. I actually have a Telegram group that I started to sort of accompany people who want to have some projects in space-related aspects and more. You know, I realized students struggle with things that they don't have to struggle with, about research and how they think about research and how they think about space. You know, I try to share a bit of knowledge. Send me an email. Let me put my email address here again.
I was going to ask you if you could send your email.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
What qualifications or knowledge should you have to get involved in the space industry? This is an interesting one.
Very interested.
Because some people tend to believe that you need to go for this particular qualification that is so difficult. You know, the space sector is an aggregator of expertise. What do I mean? You need many different expertise to work together to be successful. The quasi-totality of this expertise already exists in Africa. You might not believe it, but let me see, who's asking the question there? Salvation Thomas. Let me ask you, Thomas, what's your field of expertise?
Okay, I'm going to unmute Thomas. Salvation, I don't know if you want to send a message or you want to speak, but I'm going to request you unmute yourself. I don't think Is she still here?
Well, I would hope.
I don't think she is, but she was here just a while ago.
Salvation Thomas.
But not anymore.
Okay, well, I just wanted to be specific about it and sort of point out where Thomas's expertise fits in the space sector.
I think she codes. She does a lot of coding and space science,
Okay.
education, something like that for young people, for children.
The space sector needs people from different expertise. Software engineers, mechanical engineers, electronic engineers, electrical engineers, data scientists, physicists, mathematicians, chemists, biologists to some extent. Human resource people, managers, investors, entrepreneurs. And you, as I'm listing these things, you do realize we have a lot of brilliant people in all of these fields in Africa. The difference is you are applying your expertise in the space sector. So if I look at engineering expertise, you are using your ability as a software engineer, as an electrical engineer, as a mechanical engineer, as a mechatronics engineer, whatever. You're using your abilities to put technology to space, right? Because of the nature of the space sector, because of how rigorous it is, because of the basically zero tolerance for mistakes, you will perform your expertise, let's say practice your craft in an environment where you are tested so much. You have to be testing your stuff a lot more, probably more than you would have tested your stuff in another industry. You will need to perform at a level of expertise that is probably higher than you would have performed in another industry. And you will need, if you are not yet among the top performance in your craft, you will have no choice but to elevate yourself to the level of top performers in your craft. Why? Because 9 times out of 10, when you are building something that has to go to space, you live at the edge of what you know how to do. So you are constantly doing something for the first time and you have to do it right. So you test it a lot. You constantly have to be innovating and creating in your craft. You don't have time for routine. And that requires that you become among the best on earth at what you're doing. It is still that expertise. You build a different mindset. You build a different kind of way of thinking, right? So you still are that expert, but applying that expertise in the space sector transforms you as a person from the way you think, elevates your craft to a level of which is among the best in the world. And should you decide to go to some other industry, you have this advantage that you're already a top performer. So finding a job really is not something you have to stress too much about. Now, regarding specific degrees, because I know this has to do with the existence of, aerospace engineer, satellite systems engineer, universities that sell. Now, there are two things, and I will be blunt about it. A lot of it is sales, business, and branding, and marketing, which is part of the higher education as an industry, where you sell knowledge against a piece of paper that acknowledges that the individual has acquired some skills. There is, however, in these programs, important modules that you cover. And these modules have to do with the specificities of the space industry. when it comes to designing subsystems, when it comes to designing the mission themselves, many times when you're doing maybe a master's program related to space, you are diving into the specificities of designing for space. And it can become, how can I say, very demanding if you're not used to that level of rigor. So whatever degree you have in anything, if you're looking to get into the space sector, don't stress too much. Don't think it is something where you have to now go to this way complicated, Find a qualification near you that offers it and dare to apply. Because chances are, whether you come from what expertise, there is a place for you in the space sector. Really, whatever engineering or fundamental science you're studying, if you're already working somewhere and you decide you want to do a course or do a degree to get into the space sector, apply. Really, the difference is what you are doing. What you will learn is what is specific about the space sector when it comes to doing what you are already doing. I don't know if that helps. I know I didn't tell you to go to this university. I didn't send you a link or something. I have programs that help you bridge, but I would also recommend you to one of the other universities. My interest really is not to point you towards one direction or the other, not even mine. My interest is to shift your mindset to a place where you're not intimidated by the idea of taking a degree that has, or doing a qualification that has to do with space-related engineering. It's what you're doing is what you're doing. It is needed in the space sector. What you're going to learn is the specificities of the space sector that you need to take into account when doing what you're really good at, right? So, yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't matter which field, just gain expertise and then we'll be able to apply it to the space sector, technically.
Yeah, I teach about concurrent engineering. And in concurrent engineering design, especially for space, you have every expertise that is necessary around the table at the same time. And I mentioned human resources and management, because human resources, there's one course that I built around top level, elite level teams, how to manage an elite level team. An elite level team is a team made up of people who are dragons in their field. They are among the rare unbeatables in there. Such people, really, you don't bait them with a salary. You don't bully them at work. You don't order them around and say, just do it because I said so. You definitely don't tell them that, if you don't do this, you won't get paid. Because that's not why they do it. They're not with you because, they're desperate for money. Such a team of people are not, typically that's your typical team in space, and it's made up of all these experts. If you don't know how to manage human resources of that caliber, you're going to get it wrong all day, every day. So yes, even in human resources, you need to learn the specificities of space. In management, 9 times out of 10, a team of people involved in the space sector will be multicultural, coming from different cultures, different countries. If you don't understand the subtleties of how to manage people who come from different backgrounds, and these people are the bloody best at what they do, you can't manage the way you manage other teams. It takes a different kind of management. They won't follow your lead because your job title says the manager, and therefore the manager is the person you're supposed to follow. They follow your lead because among the best in the world, you're also the best manager that's available. if you're not an elite level manager, if you don't know how to manage human beings at an elite level, you're not going to fit. So yes, also these so-called soft expertise. And I like to take HR and management because I've seen it go to hell. If you want to do it for the space sector, yes, you can also take a course to understand what is specific about managing people in the space industry. What is specific about being handling human resources in the space industry.
Wow. So, indeed, space is for everyone. Space is for everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ifriky. This has been an
There was a hand somewhere, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think not anymore. Not anymore. But so far I've been getting like very good feedbacks. Like the meeting has been so insightful, and we are recording. Some people reached out to me. Yes, we are recording. And for those of you having network challenges, we are going to upload this video. We'll even split it into different parts, interesting parts, and everybody will be able to get a slice of the cake. It's been a wonderful one so far. We still have people joining in. Too late. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Ifriky. Thank you so much for your time. I don't think we are going to have further questions, but
I see a hand.
Parting words there. Okay, yes, there is a hand, and whose hand is this? Okay, just a second. This is Emmanuel Ibok. Okay. Okay. Sorry. I'm going to ask you to unmute. If you can keep it very short, or you can send the message, whichever you prefer. Keep the question very short. Thank you so much. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Please, I want to ask, can DevOps...
Sorry,
can DevOps... Yeah, you said something about DevOps.
DevOps, yeah, DevOps engineer. How can DevOps engineer fit with space? I'm asking a question.
What engineer?
DevOps engineer, DEVOPS.
Oh yeah, okay. The easy way to answer, is I'm going to ask you just to make it short, because one sentence of what a DevOps does. No, not in general. I will assume you are a DevOps engineer. So what do you do specifically in the industry where you work?
Okay, fine. We do more of creating of servers and database, and we deploy code on servers.
Okay, so you do realize that there are hundreds and hundreds of terabytes of data that come from space every day. Most of it is underutilized, and even more is not utilized at all. Many don't know how. First point. But now that's data that is already stored somewhere on Earth. More likely than not in Africa. We need in Africa robust and how can I say, rugged at the limit, to an extreme, data centers. We need to be able to receive, store, protect, and utilize data on African soil. We need to be able to do this for satellite data. We don't do that yet. Those who store some data, it's going to be this small server somewhere, in a lab, or but it's completely missing. So for applications where we need to store data from African satellites on African soil such that other African parties can benefit from it, we don't have it, right? One. Second, there is a drive towards keeping African data on African soil, even if this data is made available from satellites elsewhere that don't belong to Africa. Are you seeing now where you fit?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, because I like to be specific and concrete about answering this way, so that you get to see where you can contribute.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you for your last minute question, Emmanuel. Thank you for joining us. That was really last minute. Thank you so much for everybody who stayed back.
I want to add one more thing
Yes, please.
if I may. There's a drive towards in-orbit servers. There's a drive towards in-orbit servers. There's a drive towards WASP networks in orbit. There's a drive towards basically storing and processing data among satellites in orbit. So imagine your normal server here or a network of servers on Earth. There's interest in having such in orbit. I don't know whether you realize you're the one who would come and help to design such things, because we don't know how to do it. So yes, the people having these conversations are, not Africans, but
All right.
you better believe there's a lot of interest for Africans to do that.
Oh, okay.
Just to add some more as to where a DevOps engineer fits.
Thank you so much for that insight. I don't know. I don't think we'll have any further questions. I don't know if you have any parting words just right before we go. Personally, I have learned so much, and on behalf of Spacehubs Africa, we are really grateful to take out this longer time to really explain. I'm sure everybody here has learned a thing or two, and most importantly, I think everybody here is inspired. Everybody here has been encouraged, really encouraged, honestly, really encouraged. So thank you so much. And I don't know if you have any parting words, non-technical parting words, no servers, no satellite data, just parting words.
Well, just keep doing what you're doing. Keep going. Fail, it's normal. Get back up, keep going. Don't wait. Don't wait for someone else's permission. Don't wait for someone else's blessing. If you're gonna dare something, dare it. If you get it wrong, keep going also. If you fail, if you get rejected, it's not a testimony of what you are worth as a human being.
Yeah.
It is just part of the normal journey of what it takes to get to where you're going.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you were taught in school, you shouldn't fail. No. Truth is, you should actually look for opportunities to fail, because otherwise you don't grow.
Yeah.
It is true, not failing for the sake of, self-hurt, but opportunities to fail lies when you are doing something you haven't done before. So your idea might be crazy, but go for it anyway.
Yeah, keep going, everybody, keep going, Chioma, keep going, Dara, keep going, Mawel, keep going, Martha, keep going, Tony, keep going, Terry. Thank you so much for joining us, and K. Dumele and Yivan, thank you for staying to the end. We really appreciate you. I think Dr. Ifriky has sent his LinkedIn page, so you can connect with him personally and reach out to him. As you can see, he's a very simple and open person. I'm sure he'll be very, very happy to assist or advise you in any way. So thank you so much again, everybody. I think this is where we are going to close the curtains. Yeah, good night and bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Bye,
night.
everybody.
Good night, bye.
Bye.